We did it!
Welcome back to Happy Hour. Happy Monday. I hope everyone has their drinks. Cheers, Maggie. We have officially started football activities. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's giving me so much life, so much joy. Definitely hurting my day job productivity. But there's so much to talk about because we don't just have camp, but we have a major, major contract extension that just happened for a player that I think every Packer fan has been pounding the table for, which is Kenny Clark. 4 years, 70 mil. He got paid. And I think it's just a big sigh of relief because, at least for me, I feel like we have so many big free agents coming up in the next season. Like there's like 5 offhand that we've talked about for, this whole offseason about what's coming up for them. And so one of them is done. I think arguably one of the most important ones is done, the one we really want to lock up. We're going to have him from age 24 to 28, 29. Like prime Kenny Clark is going to be on the Packers defense. So we did it.
We specifically did it.
Okay, sorry. The Packers did it. Good job, Russ Ball. Good job, Goot. Really, really deserving. Like if there's a player there isn't a player that's more deserving. So really, really happy for him. When he said that he was shaking signing the contract, I was like, my heart.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of covered it, right? Like when I tweeted right away that he had gotten signed, I was like, he is 24. Like we keep forgetting that. I mean, you look at Jair Alexander and he's 23 and Adrian Amos got locked up and Za'Darius and Preston Smith. So like the core of this defense, Darnell Savage, it's very young. And to now have Kenny Clark entering a contract year where he was only 24, who's going to spend like some of his best years in Green Bay, like he's still an ascending player. Like I don't think we've seen him hit his peak yet. So the fact that there's such a strong group that will be together for the next multiple seasons, like there's a lot to like. Also, Blake, I love you. But I mean, it's just, there's a lot to be excited about, like truly. And I agree with you that I think Kenny was like the one piece that they needed to get done. And it's good it got done before the season started because, as others had said, now you get the opportunity to maybe sign one other player before season starts and you get a chance to kind of reevaluate what your cap looks like. And they pushed some of Kenny's numbers out. So it just, everything about it made sense. And if you've met Kenny, watched Kenny's interviews, like he is a genuinely humble, hardworking, deserving person. And you really couldn't picture a better player to, one, represent the Packers, and 2, deserving at that age to make that kind of money. Like that changed his family's life. And it's so great.
You hit the nail on the head right there. Like he is not just as a person, such a leader, I think, or growing into a leader on the defense, but he's incredibly disruptive and he's someone that is like a linchpin almost for our defensive line. Not almost, he is. And he is, I feel like Pettin bases a lot of what he does around Kenny Clark's abilities to eat up double teams and create pressure on the interior and even get to the quarterback and also stop the run. He does everything.
Yeah. So, and Aaron Rodgers had said in his presser that like, Kenny Clark is really underrated and kind of underappreciated, undervalued in the league. He was snubbed, obviously, from the NFL's top 100. But then Rodgers finished that up by saying he's underappreciated until you play him, right? And then the entire opposing offensive line spends the entire week game planning for Kenny Clark.
Yes.
Like, even with Za'Darius and Preston Smith, like, it's Kenny. He might be the most dangerous piece in that front seven. So just to have all 3 of them, and then you have an emerging Rashawn Gary, who I know we're going to talk about in just a little bit, and Christian Kirksey, who can play in coverage. Like, it feels like we were so high on what the defense could do last season, and we're still seeing growth and opportunity and progress with this defense going into this season now.
Yeah. So that's one of the 5. We've got 4 kind of big names that are still going to be free agents. So I think it was Ian Rappaport was speaking about, Kenny's contract and sort of what that means going forward for the rest of those players. And he specifically mentioned David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones as players that it seems like the Packers are going to prioritize. Do you agree with that?
I do. And Jacob and I have talked about this. We talked about this a little bit on the roundtable. We've talked about it on Pack-A-Day, but the Packers historically don't talk to players or, talk contract negotiations if they're not planning on re-signing someone. So like when Blake Martinez hit free agency, he talked about how it was radio silent and like he didn't hear from the team. And that's a really good indicator that they're moving on. So for Aaron Jones to come to his pressers and say things like, yeah, my agent's been in talks, like it just feels like that means that there's a lot of mutual interest in getting that deal done. Yes. And, people have mentioned that, Bakhtiari, you have some wiggle room there, whether it's the franchise tag, you can let him see what the market looks like. The same for Kevin King. You probably don't offer him a big contract now because you let him play a prove-it year. And even if he prices himself out of Green Bay, you're going to get to see more from Chandon Sullivan, maybe a Kadar Holman, Vernon Scott. I know he's playing at safety, but he could fill in at nickel. So there's just a lot of moving parts. So I think, even with A.J. Dillon, he provides them with that insurance if they can't get a deal done. But I think that he likely is the next Packer that gets signed, whether or not it happens before the season starts.
Yeah, I kind of feel like David Bakhtiari is going to be the next Packer to get an extension. He has said personally that he doesn't speak about those things, so we'll never know until it happens.
Yeah.
He did wear that shirt the other day.
I was going to say, just
call
just
my
agent.
Yeah. But I think there's mutual interest there. I think he's still playing at a very high level. I know it's a little bit rare for us to sort of give that second extension to offensive linemen, but he's just such a different animal. He is, again, similar to Kenny, I think, just like that rock on the offensive line. Rodgers is like best friend. So I think he's probably next. The only reason I say that is because I think the running back market this coming season is going to affect how we extend Aaron, just because there are so many that are going to be free agents. So it unfortunately might lower his value a little bit, which is good for us if we want to keep him. So I think it's going to be David Bakhtiari.
Yeah. And I think the running back market, we've talked about this a little bit on other shows on Packs What She Said, but the running back market will kind of like sort itself out. And because there's so much talent on the market, that does kind of fluctuate the pricing. So maybe if you're Aaron Jones, you want to get that deal done really early because you don't know what could happen to your value if you test the waters, or, you're going up against like a Dalvin Cook and other big names. And, teams will know that going into free agency, if they don't secure their running back, they will get a good one from somewhere because that's just what this pool looks like this season. So that's kind of why I think it'll be him next. But, I don't know if that'll happen during the season, if that'll get done before. I feel like there's one more extension coming before the season starts, but I don't know. What do you think? Ed, does anything get done before the season, or was Kenny the big one?
Maybe. I think Kenny's definitely the big one. If there is one more, that'd be wonderful. I personally think it's better to lock them up before the season starts. That way, I don't think anyone's focus is going to be, on anything but going in and winning games. Just that's because who our players are. But I do think there's some level of distractedness, obviously, when it comes to extensions. So I would love to see them get it done before the season, just have it kind of rest and then be focused on winning football games.
So one player that we didn't talk about, though, that I'm just curious your thoughts on. I know we'll kind of take a deep dive into actual training camp in a couple minutes, but some of the reports coming out that Jake Hansen had been starting a lot at center on second team. Lucas Patrick normally was the default second string starter at center, playing a lot more guard. Jake Hansen filling in as that role. Do you think that means anything for Corey Linsley? Whether that means that they're just trying it out early to see if there's a fit? Corey's one of those guys that they talk about as potentially being a surprise cut before the season even starts. And I don't know if I agree to that extent, but I do think that if Hansen looks good, there's a chance that he's probably one of the least likely players to get signed, as unfortunate as that would be, because Corey is a definitely all-around great guy, great player, person you'd want on your team in Green Bay.
I think, unfortunately, of the five, he is the most likely to not get an extension. I don't know necessarily if I think they're going to just cut him outright before the season starts. He's our starting center, and that's just not something you replace quite easily. And his relationship with Rodgers and just continuity across the line, I think, is really important. So maybe it's a mid-season if like you said, we're testing out Lucas Patrick or Jake Hansen and they feel like he can slide in there. Maybe it's a mid-season situation, but I don't see it being pre week 1.
That would be fascinating if it happened like right at the trade deadline. Like the Packers historically don't do that, but I guess like with that they did. So that's interesting. I didn't even think about the fact that it could potentially be something that gets done in the middle of the season. But with it being a COVID year, that's probably.
I unfortunately would love. I unfortunately think it's going to happen. I would love to have him stay. I think he's just like an absolutely solid player. Like I said, I think center is a position where you need someone to be a rock, and I think he is. But again, we have some major offensive line sort of camp battles going on right now, particularly on that right side. So we'll see who they decide is going to slide in there, and if they can keep someone for cheaper and not extend someone like Corey Linsley, who would require somewhat of a larger contract extension, then that's probably just business-wise what they're going to do, which is unfortunate. Yeah. But on the flip side, we did have some surprise releases. 3 players that I think you and I have talked about these players
a lot,
like a good amount.
So I think on this show significantly,
we don't have to, spend too much time on it, but I do think that it's interesting. Okay, James Looney, I'm very sorry, you don't get to find out how the transition to tight end is going.
Jacob texted me his condolences right after it happened, so
I think that was a foregone conclusion.
Yes, yeah,
like the tight end room is pretty set, and he is just way behind. Mm-hmm. I think Darryl Stewart, a little bit surprising, but maybe not since they've signed a few undrafted wide receivers recently. Yeah. And then Marc-Antoine Decoy, I don't know. I mean, I guess they just felt like it wasn't right. They feel like the cornerback room, again, is like pretty set. I don't know, but I'm bummed that we didn't get to at least see them practice.
Yeah, Andy had said about Antoine Decoy that he was like one of the graded out as like one of the best undrafted free agents, and everyone was, kind of vying for him, and he ended up coming to Green Bay. And, he, in regular seasons, he probably would have been one of those sneaky picks to latch on either to the 53 as like one of the undrafted free agents, or I at least thought he had an outside shot at the practice squad, because we know that practice squad depth is going to be more important than ever when you think about like just having players that know kind of your scheme already. Like, you're not as likely to sign outside free agents or undrafted guys mid-season to kind of fill out that roster. So that one I think surprised me the most. I would have liked to see Stewart get some opportunities on kick returns, because I think one of the weird parts, and this I guess is kind of a segue, but Tyler Ervin now lining up at wide receiver instead of running back, like that changes the dynamic of a lot of position groups, because last week we were like banging the table pretty hard that they were going to keep 5 wide receivers and 4 running backs. And now if Tyler Ervin's technically a wide receiver, whether or not he makes an official position change. I know. Do you think he's going to change his number?
I don't know. It's I was like, I don't know.
He doesn't have.
I'm curious. Like I see it. Like now that they're doing it, I'm like, yeah, okay, like that. Yeah. Makes sense. I just am wondering, like you said, what that means for each of those rooms, because does that mean we keep someone like Dexter Williams and another wide receiver doesn't make the team? Do we only keep 3 running backs technically, and then we have 6 wide receivers now? So it's interesting. I think Tyler Ervin is a little bit of a lock to make the team, because he's clearly the go-to for punt and kick returns. So whatever position he decides to play, he's going to be on the 53, I'm assuming. But it's an interesting transition.
Yeah, and I think it was Aaron Nagler, a friend of the show, who said that Tyler Ervin was like catching lightning in a bottle. Like, dude is just fast. He looks explosive. Swerve. Yeah, great. I love it. But yeah, we joke that he's like the jet sweep king, but whether he lines up in the slot, he has so much versatility and I think untapped potential for just like another boost that this offense can take, because we're excited to see what Aaron Jones can do as a receiving back. We're excited to see A.J. Dillon, who I'm going to let you talk about him. I got to talk about him. Jamal Williams.
We got to talk about him.
We have to. And Mama Westendorf also wants us to talk about him. So
okay, so here's the thing. I do want to segue into the offense a little bit, because it does seem like feedback from beat reporters who are there and also from the pressers that just feels like much more fluid, like crisper. Everyone's kind of on the same page, which is so nice to hear, because year 2, that's kind of the jump that you hope to happen. But also you can't read too much into camp. It's only been 2 days, no
Right.
pads. But like the star of the show is AJ Dillon. Like there's no two ways about it. He's gone viral. Like he's gone viral on Twitter. Like Good Morning Football is taking notice. Like the league is on notice now because AJ Dillon's physique is just out of this world. And I know that we can talk about his quads and his thighs and his calves all we want, but I think one of the more important things we want to. But I think another important thing is that you can be big and you can be physical, but are you fast and do you have burst? And the one thing that Andy Herman talked about, friend of the show, is that he has both those things. And so, like, as Andy said, he kind of passes the eye test where he's going to be incredibly difficult to take down. And he's fast and he can turn the wheels on, the burners on when he needs to. So just all around, like really exciting. I mean, just really, really, really exciting. He's not even in pads yet and he looks huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it best pre-show when we were talking about conversation topics. And obviously AJ Dillon is the topic. Like you said, he's gone viral. Mama Westendorf loves him. I've been banging the drum for AJ Dillon since his draft night. I just love him. And I'm so excited to see, what he can do when he puts the pads on. But you made a good point, and you had said, yes, we're focusing on his legs, but the focus should be on his hands because he can catch and he's got that soft touch. And
I want to talk about the pass catching.
If you play for Matt LaFleur, that has to be a part of your game. We're going to see Aaron Jones do it more. We know Jamal Williams can do it. And AJ Dillon, from the two, or so practices that we've seen through the grapevine of, these little glimpses of footage, he looks good. And that's just another layer now that this offense is going to have.
I mean, you and I have talked about this a little bit, which is like you hope, right, that you don't take a back in the second round if they can't add some level of like dimension to the game. You're not just going to take like any old classic running back. I think it's very clear that AJ Dillon is not a classic running back. He's very special, both physically and his abilities. Yeah. And, I saw a video of Jordan Love throwing him. They were just like doing drills together of him running routes with Jordan Love. And it's just like, it's very, very exciting because it's going to take work. Like we've seen that it's taken a few seasons for both Jamal and Aaron Jones to like get involved in the passing game. And that's fair. That's to be expected. He wasn't asked to do it at BC. But if you think about a 6 foot, 247 pound AJ Dillon, bruiser running back, also running routes. I mean, what do defenses do? Like, what do you do to stop him? I don't know if you can.
You just lay down.
You just
lay down.
You whiff on the tackle and blame it on that. I don't know. Like, and then you have someone like Aaron Rodgers who's going to throw him dimes because he's going to make it easier for him. So it's just interesting to me because, we have this sort of question about who's going to slide into the slot. And we could maybe get Tyler Ervin in there. We could maybe get Aaron Jones in there and have, another running back in the backfield, but that running back in the backfield could also be catching a pass instead of running. It's so complex, which is exactly what Matt LaFleur wants. And I just think it's so exciting. I think AJ Dillon is so exciting.
This is probably my favorite quote that, has come from any of the pressers. And it's Christian Kirksey when they asked him about AJ Dillon. And he said, as a linebacker, you want to man up and say, if I see you in the hole, I'm going to hit you up top. But when you see how big he is, you almost got to go low. But then you look at his legs and he's got tree trunks. So you might want to think twice with that too. I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. But he's absolutely right. In Aaron Jones, and no disrespect, because he did break a lot of tackles in 2019. That was one of his skills, as a running back, was his ability to break tackles. But a smaller guy like that, even like a Dalvin Cook, you can kind of wrap them up high. But you can try to wrap AJ Dillon up high. You can try to wrap him up down low. And I don't know if you're going to be able to wrap him up at all. So
I genuinely want to know, like, who is going to be able to take him down. Like genuinely. I just, it scares me. It scares me. But it's definitely exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing more from him. There's some other Some other standouts out there in the passing game, obviously Alan Lazard has clearly, I think, solidified himself still as wide receiver 2. I read that he had like a really insane, like one-handed catch, like touchdown catch, and is still like very much on the same page with Rodgers, which I love to see, because you hope, we talk about it all off season, and you hope that he comes in and actually is making that jump. And it seems like he's on the right track. Reggie Begelton has been standing out at wide receiver. So the one thing that I've noticed, though, which I'm curious if you've noticed as well, very little mention of EQ.
Yeah.
Very little mention.
Yeah. I mean, I watched all the pressers, and Aaron Rodgers had made a comment about how everybody wants to talk about Alan Lazard, and it's easy because he does all the things you want him to do, and he's coming into a new season, and he's just building off of everything that he was doing in 2019. He got asked about MVS, and, Rodgers is a private guy. He said, I'm not going to talk about what I coached him up, what we talked about, off the field or in the locker room, whatever. But, he knows he's got to step up. But yeah, I mean, I think EQ kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit, and it might kind of be the same thing that happened with Josh Jackson, where by the time he fully recovered from his injury, he was in a crowded room. And I think that EQ will get his opportunities to stand out, but up front, it's Adams and Lazard. If Begelton is looking good and kind of jumping up and down the depth chart, if Kumaro is getting his opportunities, because we've seen some of that as well, MVS, like EQ could be 6th in line for some of these snaps. And then if you bring in Malik Turner, Travis Fulgham, there's just a lot of moving pieces, and wide receiver is going to be one of the harder rooms to break into. But I do think that EQ is going to get his opportunities as camp progresses, and I think that that's when we'll hear more.
I agree. And I think it could just be one of those things where someone's just not tweeting about it, and he's doing plenty and we just don't hear about it because we're not there. But it was just one of the things that I noticed, because I obviously am super hype on him and I'm very excited to see how he is. The only thing is that LaFleur did say that he looks fully healthy, looks fully recovered, looks great from his off-season workouts, which you expect given sort of what his dad puts them through in the season. But really, really excited, and I hope to hear more about him.
Should we switch to the defense?
Sure.
Because
you want to talk about your mans?
I have to talk about Christian Kirksey today. Yeah, I mean, I pounded the table a little bit, and I just, I don't know if at the time I was like, oh, it's my bias because my husband's a Browns fan, so I'm familiar with him already. But Kirksey was the guy out of everyone in the free agency class. Corey Littleton would have been nice, but he was a guy that I thought, given the extensive contracts that you have to give now your free agent class in 2021, you sign a guy like Kirksey, and if he stays healthy, which can be a significant if, given his last couple seasons, he can make a difference at your middle linebacker position. And it's no disrespect to Blake Martinez, because I think Blake Martinez kind of filled the role that the defense asked him to fill. But I don't know if that was due to his own, limitations as a player, if he wasn't asked to kind of hit his ceiling. But I think we know who Blake Martinez is. And I think that when Kirksey is able to showcase who Kirksey is, he can be a more athletic version of that and play that same kind of role, whether he does drop into coverage or whether he is kind of helping to fill holes in the run game. And there's just a lot to like there. And, if you are following the tweets from training camp, Perri and I have been obsessed with them. It's like what we live for now that camp has started. That's one of the takeaways, is just that, Kirksey is flying around on the defense. He looks like he's been there forever. And he kind of has the cheat because he worked with Mike Pettin, was drafted by Mike Pettin in Cleveland, but he just feels like
such a natural fit.
The same way that the Smiths were last year. Like, it's just another piece that, if all fits, is so perfect for this defense.
I completely agree. I've seen a few videos. I've seen sort of what everyone's saying about him. Just seamless, just absolutely seamless right in there. Yes, he has a little bit of an advantage because of Pettin, but I think that's a good thing. Like, Blake maybe didn't fit what Pettin wanted to do to a T. And the only thing about Christian Kirksey, right, is can he stay healthy? No one's ever doubted his abilities and his skill as a linebacker. So if he's healthy, he's easily an upgrade. I don't think there's any question about that. So just so excited. When I read today that the first camp interception was Christian Kirksey, I was like, Maggie. Because you really did pound the table for him this offseason, and then he got signed, and so well done.
I take my small victories as I can get them.
So Jacob is like dying talk about Rashawn Gary. So let's talk about Rashawn Gary because I have so much. He looks so good.
He does.
He looks so good. He's slimmed down a little bit. He says his body mass index is like the same, but his body type is different. Today during his presser, he's like, I'm only 22. I'm just growing into my man body. And I was like, we forget about that. You know what I mean? Like he's still adjusting to his body. And I just think that was he just is such a well-spoken guy too. I really enjoyed listening to him talk. Yeah. The biggest thing that stood out to me, was that he has been watching not just his film, but Preston and Za'Darius's film from last season. And that to me is just such a sign of someone who's really, really actually trying to get better and that he's following what they're doing on the field. He mentioned them multiple times, how they've been such an important influence on him. Of course, we can imagine that that's true. But he's gone back this offseason and not just worked out and worked on his, his drills and his hands and his footwork, but he's watched their film and his film and is going to try to sort of mirror what they do on the field. And I just think that's such a good sign. I love that he's doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things with Rashawn is that he has to kind of block out that noise. And I can only imagine how difficult it was to come to Green Bay as a 12th overall pick. You're living out a dream that you've had since you were a kid, and you're behind two NFL top 100 players at their respective positions, the position that you got drafted to play, and they both signed 4-year contracts. So then you get drafted and you're like, okay, like when is my opportunity? And he's taken it as seamlessly and professionally as you'd want a guy to do that. And like you said, he's learning from them. And we saw, how Kyler Fackrell rotated in, and Gary will have those opportunities. But, we got really lucky that the Smith brothers stayed healthy last season. And if anything were to happen, he's somebody going into year 2 that you would completely trust to play one of the premium positions on the edge. Or if you get all 3 of them out there, if he lines up over center or if he's rushing off the edge and Za'Darius is roaming, just having that extra piece makes the defense even more versatile. So, he wasn't asked to do stand-up roam in college. Like he was hands in the dirt, more like a defensive end rather than a rushing linebacker. And so he's literally learning like a new skills to be part of this defense. And so he's learning behind the best, like literally the best in the league. And so it's just going to take time. But you hit the nail on the head. Like he is such a team player. He said today, someone asked him, I don't remember who it was, like, was it tough to sit on the sidelines during the NFC Championship game, knowing that you weren't out there really contributing? And he was like, look, I am going to get out there and be ready when my number is called. And if that's 1 snap, if that's 300 snaps, if that's 800 snaps, I don't care. I'm going to always be ready when they call me in. And that team mentality is exactly what we look for in these guys. It's what Za'Darius and Preston, I almost call them Z and P. It's what they preach. And so I just think he's really seamlessly transitioning into that room. And hopefully he does get on the field more and we don't have to worry about him being on the sidelines when we're getting slaughtered by a 4th string running back. And I think kind of going back to that point, he has done exactly what you would want a player going into their 2nd season to do, especially in such a weird offseason where the guys haven't been at Lambeau together. They're not able to have those same team building activities. Jandon Sullivan in his presser said the exact same thing. He said that during this offseason, he basically went back and watched every one of Shamon Williams' snaps to grow from him and learn from him and see how to play that role. So, these guys really kind of took it upon themselves saying like, hey, it's a weird offseason. Jamal Williams ran up mountains. He did hill sprints. However they decided to get in shape. I know we saw Aaron Rodgers and David Bakhtiari kind of running on the beach in the sand because that is a tough workout. Whatever the guys did, just the fact that they took it upon themselves to go study not only their film, but the film that they want to learn from, I think says a lot about what the defense can be and just the caliber of players that you have in the locker room. They're willing to put that effort in.
Yeah. So another player that we've been super excited about who's I guess made a few splash plays is Kingsley Keke. I've seen his name thrown around there a lot. Definitely starting next to Kenny. made apparently a really great tackle for a loss against AJ Dillon. So I guess we know one player that can tackle AJ Dillon.
just the one.
Just the one. It's Kingsley Kiki. So that's really exciting. That's promising. I know defensive line's been a question mark for us. So someone that we are definitely rooting for is standing out. Another player that Matt LaFleur talked about, which goes well with one of our Packs What She Said episodes that we did recently, is it seems from what Matt LaFleur said today that Darnell is not just picking up the defense in year 2 schematically, but also from a football IQ standpoint.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that he's doing a lot more directing out in the secondary, and he seems a little bit more confident just understanding what's being asked of him and also what's being asked of the entire secondary. And I felt like, we talk a lot about making that jump, right? Going from your rookie year to your second year. He played really well, and so it's going to take a lot for him to make that jump. And I felt like that sort of knowledge piece was not something I personally thought of, but is such a good point, is that he should be understanding what's being asked of him and also being able to direct everyone and some of the rookies that may be on the field more with him, like Vernon Scott. So that was exciting to hear.
I'm glad that you mentioned Vernon Scott, because 2 names that have stuck out to me from the first 2 days of camp were Vernon Scott and Raven Green. And I think that says a lot about the safety group, the secondary as a whole, and kind of how that unit is progressing, because we just had a show about this on Packs What She Said, but we talked about kind of the depth at safety and what it looks like. Obviously Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage are locked in as your starters. They're both capable of playing in both spots, although you kind of think that Amos will be your strong safety and Darnell Savage will kind of roam in the back. But like, to hear that Raven Green has looked really good, he's kind of been flying around. He could be the guy that starts opposite Christian Kirksey. It might not necessarily be an inside linebacker. It could be a hybrid player. Vernon Scott has been everywhere. He's 6'2". He's got that body type that he can play really well in the nickel. So just a couple guys that are really making the most of their opportunity and kind of enforcing that they're not going to get buried on the depth chart. Like, if the Packers are going to keep 4 safeties, both of those guys are going to make sure that they're in the consideration for that depth spot. So I just really like everything that we've seen so far out of that safety room.
Yeah, I think the DBs in general just are so confident in them. And like you said, we play dime all the time. So we need tons of depth there that we can trust, and we clearly have. And Vernon Scott and Raven Green are also guys that are completely different players. Yeah. And so we'll bring different skill sets, just like, I haven't seen Will Redmond's name thrown around there, but I feel fully confident that he's also going to make an impact. And then, Shannon Sullivan, right, is getting time with the media. So clearly they feel confident in him. All 3, him, Kevin, Jair, they've all mentioned, how much Tremont has impacted them, like you said earlier. So it's just, I have to talk about Tremont every chance I get.
It's fine.
It's the depth is very exciting. And I think they all bring something very different and unique to the table.
Yeah, and like, in addition to recognizing Tremont, because I think that absolutely he deserves a ton of credit, and I think we've talked that we would love to see him come back as a DB's coach when he officially hangs up his cleats, whenever that is. But Coach Gray, talk about a coach that's come in and just in one offseason has completely changed the landscape of the room. And I liked Coach Witt. I liked a lot of the guys that they've had in that role, but Coach Gray is somebody that every presser is getting like shouted out as saying, like Shannon Sullivan mentioned, that what Coach Gray did was he came in and he taught him how to recognize everything that was going to happen pre-snap. So he's like, I know the play before it's even lined up. Like, just those little subtle things are exactly what you want from your DBs. And the fact that, Coach Gray is getting all this attention, it's just another piece again. And we talk about like the building blocks of the defense, and having that cohesion in the secondary is another one of those huge foundational pieces that you need to be successful.
And we've known that he, his history shows us that he can really transform a DB room.
Yes.
Obviously, I think Xavier Rhodes had like his Pro Bowl season with Gray as his coach. So I feel really, really confident that he's going to take all of them to the next level. And all of them in their pressers have attributed so much growth to him and Tremont. And I just think that says a lot. I think it's one of the best signings that we did this offseason is bring in Jerry Gray.
Yeah. So we do have a question about another signing. So Curious your thoughts on it. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but now that we actually are kind of seeing what they're doing in camp, Rick Wagner obviously was one of the other signings that Brian Gutekunst made this offseason. But Rudy asks if we can talk about the right side of the offensive line. So we know that the first 2 days of camp, we've kind of rotated between Rick Wagner, Lane Taylor, and Billy Turner. So do you have any sense or maybe what your preference would be for how the Packers start the season on that right side of the line?
It's interesting that they're doing that. I'm kind of glad. I think we've talked about this, right? Like they wouldn't have kept Lane Taylor if they didn't feel like he could contribute.
Yeah.
So whether that he's a starter or more of a swing tackle and he's just getting reps right now, I'm not sure. I know that people have said that they think Billy Turner struggled a little bit last season. I hope that he can clean up some of that stuff because we gave him a pretty hefty contract. So you want him to be a starter, but same with Rick Wagner too. But I think to me, it's nice to have Lane Taylor because Lane Taylor's been in the system and he knows that fundamental knowledge with him is there. And Rick Wagner obviously is new, so he has to sort of like build into that. So I think it's nice that we have sort of three guys that we feel like can rotate in that starter position, especially for a guy like Rick Wagner, who maybe like he just needs to be caught up to speed a little bit more.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that to me, Rick Wagner makes sense as the starting right tackle. I think that he kind of will solidify that spot for himself. I think the real battle will end up being for right guard, whether it's Lane Taylor or Billy Turner. And Billy Turner's just got such a unique body type because when you look at him, you wouldn't think that he would play guard, which can be an advantage and a disadvantage when he's lined up there. So I think I talked about this. It might have been at the roundtable on Saturday, but kind of whoever that person is that doesn't get a starting role, you already have Lucas Patrick, you have John Runyon, you have a lot of depth on the interior of the offensive line. So We've seen Lane Taylor in an emergency play left tackle. So, I mean, I think he's better at the interior, but whether it's him or Billy Turner, people have been clamoring to re-sign Jared Valdir, bring him back for another year as a swing tackle. I think your swing tackle is probably on the roster, whether it's a vet or maybe a Yash Niesman or somebody that can kind of fill in, even John Runyon, if given those opportunities.
No, I completely agree. I don't think that there's going to be another offensive lineman signing. I think there's already like 11 in the building. Like we don't need any more. And it would definitely mean cutting someone if we want to bring in Jared Valdir. Not that I'm opposed to it, right? But I agree with you. I think the person is on the roster, and right now they're just going through that rotation. That's what camp's for. You just figure out who fits.
All right, should we take more questions? Do you want to find some questions?
Sure.
Well, I got one. I got one while you look.
Yes. Yes. I love this question because day one of camp, the starting inside linebacker next to Christian Kirksey was Oren Burks. Mm-hmm. Which obviously that's what you hope for. He's third round pick. But I don't know. You're pretty high on Ty Summers. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard. I mean, and the thing that Kirksey said in his presser too was that every guy is versatile. Every guy is really athletic. And he said that everything that their room has done has been cross-training because any season you have to worry about injuries. But this season specifically, you're kind of wondering, if you're going to have a COVID test that crops up or something happens where you don't have reliability at a position like you normally would. So, I mean, I think, smart money says it probably would be Oren Burks, but I think Ty Summers has a realistic shot. I think that he looks really good. We talked earlier in the show about Raven Green potentially making the most of his opportunities and playing kind of that hybrid role. So I think that it'll vary. But I would definitely say that Kamal Martin has like the farthest shot as a rookie. But I think between the first three guys and then Raven kind of dropping in and maybe like certain dime packages, that's where you'll see the rotation. But like you said, we hope it's Oren right now because he was a third round pick.
Right. Okay. Not a ton of questions tonight. However, maybe this one's, here we go. So I was looking at the defensive line, actually, because, Kenny just got signed, looking at the depth. And I always seem to forget about Dean Lowry and Tyler Lancaster, which is so funny because they just signed both of them to extensions. So do you think that starting week one is going to be Kingsley Keke, or do you think it's going to be Dean or who next to him?
I mean, I think it'll be Dean, but I think that we'll just see a lot more rotation because Dean and Kingsley have very different kind of roles that I think they play. And I think that Dean has the potential to kind of be a run stuffer, and I think Kingsley Kiki would probably be more of your pass rusher. So however they decide to kind of use those guys, they paid Dean a lot of money, and I don't want to say it's like a make or break it year for him, but it kind of is to some extent because, he got more money than maybe even the market would have indicated. I think they signed him a little prematurely and then saw the way that everything else shook out. So I know that there's a lot of people that still want, the team to sign like a Snacks, which I don't think at this point will be happening. People wanted Mike Daniels to come back. So
he's with the Bengals now.
Right. And I think we have to see what happens with Kingsley, but so far everything we've seen or heard from other players in the room, Kenny Clark specifically, has said everybody knows, right? Like they never want what happened in the NFC Championship game to happen again because it's all we've talked about. It's been
they're
8
probably
months.
So sick of hearing about it. Like they're like in pressers, like, can you please stop asking me about this game?
Well, and it's been 8 months.
We saw what happened.
So their goal is to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So, we talked about this, I think, last week. Kenny Clark saying, whatever we do, we're going to make sure that, I'm not in charge of my gap. I'm in charge of a gap and a half. Like everybody is taking on the added responsibility. So I think that Dean and Kingsley are both going to get a ton of rotation. The player that I'm probably most interested in is Montravius Adams and whether or not he actually makes it on the 53.
Me too.
But I did like that question from Aaron.
Aaron, I'm drinking my favorite beer tonight. It's a Sweetwater IPA. Atlanta, Georgia. Pale ale. What are you drinking?
I was Spotted Cow, and I went on a little bit of a rampage before the show started because everybody always argues about what New Glarus beer is the best, and the answer is all of them. Like Spotted Cow, Moon Man, Two Women, Totally Naked, Kid Kolsch, like they're all good. Staghorn, one of my favorite Oktoberfests. So if you offer me New Glarus, I'm not even going to ask you what kind it is. I'm going to say yeah. Like but today it's Spotted Cow.
Maggie's on her beer soapbox. Okay. Oh, this is a question that I'm really excited about. No. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. You get to attend every Packers game, but you have to stay quarantined alone at the stadium the entire year. Do you do it? See,
sorry, Mom. Sorry, husband. Yeah.
My question here is, do I have a bed? Like, do I have like a comfortable room? Because if so, yes. But if I'm like sleeping like in a box, like no.
Really? You wouldn't just like Lambeau has couches. You wouldn't just like post up on a couch to
like I'd rather just watch at home,
Okay, Dan, if you're still watching, you have to follow up in the comments. Do we get to eat at 1919? Do we get
true.
like if there's food and drink? Yeah, because if I have to like scrounge from what people leave in the stands, I don't want to do it anymore because they're dirty. But yeah, so Dan, let us know. We'll circle back. We'll, bring it around.
All right, Maggie. Someone also wants to know, this is for you because I can't drink the Wisconsin beers because I don't live there, but do you have a must-have Wisconsin beer that someone needs to add to their shelf?
I have so many must-have Wisconsin beers, but because it's Oktoberfest season, you have to get Ale Asylum Octillion. It's an Oktoberfest. Ale Asylum is a brewery out of Madison. Definitely worth a try. Every, Oktoberfest season, I frequent my local Festival Foods, which is a Wisconsin chain, and I get all of my different Oktoberfests to try. So Octillion's my favorite that I've had so far. So there you go.
There you go. Recommendation from the beer queen herself.
I'm the cheese queen. I'm the beer queen.
You are. I mean, is that not so like spot on?
Heavy is the head that wears the cheese head.
Fair. All right. Any other sort of last minute lasting impressions from the first 2 days of camp?
I do have one more question, and then if you want to wrap up. It got buried, but I think it's a really good one.
All right, give it to me.
From Facebook user, I'm so sorry whoever this is. Like,
we can't
it doesn't
see your
tell
names.
us. Yeah. Will the tight end be a work in progress this year or a breakout season?
Such an interesting question. I'm gonna go such a cop-out answer. Somewhere in the middle. I don't think that it's going to be this like prime Jermichael Finley situation, but I definitely don't think it's going to be as bad as last season. Like, I think that Mercedes Lewis brings some serious consistency, and I think Jace takes a leap from what he did last season. Obviously, he was hurt for most of the season, but I think from what we saw, he's going to be a factor. Will he be, like I said, like a prime Jermichael Finley? No, he's going to need a little time for that if that's what his ceiling is, but that's not an answer, but that's my answer.
No, I agree. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of multiple tight end sets, and we kind of know what Mercedes Lewis is, what he's brought on to do. I think we're going to see a lot more Josiah DeGuara than we maybe initially expected, because I don't think he's just going to be a tight end. I think he's going to line up an H-back. I think he's going to line up a fullback. I think he's going to line up so many ways, and I think they're going to get him on the field a lot. So even if he's not, like, if his receptions and his yardage totals aren't, like, stellar, I think that his snap counts are going to be pretty significant, just because it seems like they're really, really working towards integrating him into the offense his year one.
Do you see Matt LaFleur's face when he talks about Josiah DeGuara? Like, I've never seen him light up like he does when they ask him questions. Like, he, in that brain of his, he's got tons of X's and O's ready for him, just like, put him there.
He wanted him so bad.
So badly.
So bad. Yeah.
And, like, I mean, I hope that what he envisions is what ends up happening on the field. I feel, and I've seen a lot of sort of Kyle Shanahan, Kyle Juszczyk comps, but, like, so what? It works with 49ers, and Matt LaFleur comes from that tree. And football is a game of copycat. It's a game of taking what works for another team and applying it to your system and seeing if you can trick a defense into biting on that player's route. So and you know what? We got to stay competitive with 49ers, okay?
I don't want to talk about the 49ers. So Dan is still here. Hi, Dan. Thank you for sticking with us. He did follow up. He said, you can use the kitchens after closing. No contact with other fans. It's like Phantom of the Opera. So do you take it now?
No, I'm still going to choose to watch at home in my bed on my TV. Sorry, Dan.
I just picture myself getting, like, second-degree burns trying to sneak into the kitchen at night and make my own cheese curds, and it's just not.
I was just going to say, like, when it gets, like, to be 0 degrees there, like, is there heat? I'm just, I'm going to watch at home. You know what I'm going to do, actually? I'm going to come and stay at Maggie's.
Yes.
And so I'll be in Wisconsin, and we can
try all the Wisconsin beers.
But, no. I appreciate that, though. I appreciate that question. It really did make me think. Like, would I do something like that?
Had I not been married, I probably would do that. But Mark is going to die if I don't feed him, so I have to look out for him.
We have to take care of Mark. That's number one priority.
Mark is a good egg. So, is it?
Is it? I think Robert Tonyan has a lot of upside. It's just a matter of if he gets his opportunities. Like, I don't see him being anything more than, like, tight end 3. And yes, we will probably see a lot of 12, maybe 13 personnel sets with Matt LaFleur, but I just don't know if it's going to be a Robert Tonyan breakout season type situation, or if he's just sort of going to be a small piece.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is his year. Like, there's a lot of players on the roster where you're looking for make or break years, and everybody keeps saying that, expect big things from Bob Tonyan, and I think you should. I mean, he trains with George Kittle. They're really close. He's learning a lot, but like you said, you might run into the opportunity where he's kind of buried. Yeah. And even with Tim Boyle, like, Tim Boyle has, they call him Laser Show for a reason. Like, dude's got a cannon. He's been looking really good, but they drafted Jordan Love. Like, I don't think Tim Boyle, I think he'll stick around this season because Jordan Love is still learning, but I don't see them taking Josiah DeGuara and taking Jay Sternberger if they're going to hand the reins to Bob Tonyan. So I think that there's a part of it where it's like, you just missed your opportunity with this specific team.
But that doesn't mean he can't be a contributor. It just means he's not going to be tight end 1, and, like, that's okay. Especially because Matt LaFleur is going to use multiple tight ends on the field. I mean, he has one of my one of my favorite plays ever was that insane touchdown pass against the Seahawks.
Oh yeah, and they were in the all whites.
All white, yes.
So
I'm like picturing it. Like I love
clean.
Love the color rush uniforms. Well done, Packers. But just like a flick of the wrist, like 55-yard pass from Aaron Rodgers, of course. So.
Can we talk about that we also agree on the color rush being clean as hell? Like, I know that people whine about, like, white's not a color. One, white is a color. And two, all white looks
fire.
So clean. So everybody calm down. Just calm down.
And the best part is when Aaron Rodgers comes out of a color rush game and his all white uniform is still white because his offensive line protects the hell out of him. Love that.
I think that's it. I think that's it for us. I don't think that we can like.
I mean, we're at the end, so I guess my final kind of takeaway is about QB1, which is just he seems so happy to be back playing football and being with his team. I think any sort of narrative around him, like, should be completely squashed at this point because, I mean, him and Jordan Love are playing game of catch together and he's smiling. And even Tim Boyle today said that he's, joking around. He just seems super, super happy. So he is savoring every moment.
I was going to say, like, not to be negative, but I think that, like, what the Jordan Love pick did was it put things in perspective. And sometimes in life, like, whether you want to say like the 2020 year in general, like you get these moments that put things into perspective for you. So as much as Aaron Rodgers wants to retire in Green Bay, and I think a lot of fans want him to retire in Green Bay, this is kind of a wake up call that like, you still might, like he still very well could.
Yeah.
But it's a reminder that like every time you get to the playoffs, that means something. And every time you can go on a run, like that means something because nothing, like look at Alex Smith.
They don't
nothing
take
is
anything
guaranteed.
for granted.
Right. So just having these opportunities to come back and like be in good spirits and be around, they probably didn't know if they were even going to have football, especially now seeing the college football landscape. So just being in this environment again, I think is like extra special to these guys this season because it does really kind of put things in perspective at the end of the day.
I agree with you. And you can tell that he's really sort of, his mindset is there with just like enjoy every moment that he has left. And like I said, not take anything for granted. So let's end on a funny note, because my answer to this question is I only get one carry because after that one singular carry, I'm on a stretcher going to the hospital. Probably it's one of those like 3rd and 40 situations pushed back. So yeah, that's my answer. I always root for myself, right? So in my head, I'm like, even if I try to do this, like really politically, I'll be like, lose 3 yards, and then I'll gain a yard. Like I'll get really lucky and it'll still be a comp of -5, like when you add it all up cumulatively. But I'm like, I want to say that like at least on one play of my life, but it's not going to happen. I agree with you. It'll be like 3rd and 40 and I'm going to break a leg and then just hobble and Yeah, I don't get 3 carries. There's one singular carry that happens.
I'm getting a second carry, but probably only the second one. like, I'm going to get up and then get hit again, and I'm not going to want to get back up.
No, thank you.
Because, Aaron, I don't know if you've seen my quads, but they definitely don't look like AJ Dillon's.
My AJ Dillon's leg is my whole body.
Each of us are one pillar of his legs.
Exactly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, AJ Dillon, I would love to have you on the show and chat. You are our favorite. Okay. Wrapping up. Thank you all for joining us. As always, find us here every Monday night. We go live on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc. You can follow us as well on Twitter. Let's get those banners going.
Well, which one? Okay, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay. You can follow me at Perri_Goldstein. You can follow Maggie at Maggie J. Loney. We podcast as well once a week because never enough time together. It's called Pax What She Said. And if you're not listening to it, but you're on here, you should be doing both. And you can follow us on Twitter at PWSS Podcast. It's wonderful. It's like the highlight of my week. And then we also... Maggie's once a week. I'm every other week with the Pack a Day podcast, Andy Herman and crew. Again, super fun. You can find us on both podcasts or on every streaming service and Cheesehead TV. And then stick around because at It's 8 p.m. here, but 7 p.m. Lambeau time. We're going to have the Freezer guys on. So more talk. Can never get enough Packers talk on a Monday night, because what else is there to do right now in quarantine? And so you can listen to the Freezer guys and follow them at Podcast Freezer. And as always, we are part of Game On Wisconsin. So follow Game On Wisconsin on Twitter. Our social media chair is excellent. She's funny as hell, super entertaining. All the updates you can be found in Game On Wisconsin. So give that Twitter handle a follow. And as always, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.
Good night.